space habitation is the idea which I think fascinates everybody at some point, that we would live somewhere beyond Earth. People who might not really be that trained to handle an eventuality or any other critical situation if it happens. So safety concerns are very important. The design was really brilliant. The International Space Station has been built in segments. Like, it has taken around 10 years for the whole thing to be completed. So India has a space tourism module which it is going to launch, and this is supposed to be ready and for launch by 2030. The biggest point of, allowing people for space tourism or experiencing those few minutes of suborbital flights is the whole idea is that it really fascinates everyone. So what we learn from space, the idea is to apply it here on Earth also, and to drive innovation and experimentation further.
Hello and welcome to this conversational video series brought to you by Vision IAS. There was a time when we used to wonder about the nature of space. Today we live in an era in which space exploration has demystified much of it. We are curious to know about how to spend time in space, which is space tourism all about. And we are also struck by a remote idea or thought of whether or not space can be inhabited, which is all about space habitation. To tell us more about these interesting concepts, today we have with us an eminent faculty member of Vision IAS, Dr. Jasmine. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, let's begin this discussion with space tourism, which is one of the two fascinating concepts. Could you please tell us about the current status of space tourism?
So first of all, we would start by understanding what is space tourism and how it is different from our aircrafts or all the other parts of aviation industry. So we define space by a boundary called the Kármán line. So that is 100 kilometers from the surface of the Earth. So till you fly till 100 kilometers, that is an aircraft, that is your normal aviation industry. But once you cross that 100 kilometer boundary, the Kármán line, then you say it's a spacecraft, and going beyond that 100 kilometers, that is what is a space exploration. And if you are doing it for leisure, entertainment, not exactly for any scientific pursuit, so that would qualify as space tourism.
And now we'd like to know about how it's done. There must be several options to pursue space tourism.
So the options which we have here is, one is called a suborbital space flight. So suborbital would be going till 100 kilometers and then just coming back. The idea is you go into space, you experience that weightlessness, and it is a few minutes, that whole flight, and then with that experience you come back. A lot of private companies now are coming up with suborbital flights, like you have the SpaceX, you have Blue Origin. Interestingly, we also have had the first person of Indian origin. So this is a pilot named Gopi Thotakura, and he has recently had the opportunity to go on a suborbital flight. Other than this, the option is going into orbit. So that will be a little more longer duration. You go in orbit around the Earth. So in that sense, you will be able to visualize things from space. You'll be able to see other planets. You'll have a little bit more time. And a further extension of this could be maybe having some sort of a temporary habitation there, maybe visiting another planet, maybe going to moon. That's something which might be a possibility sometime in future.
We'd like to know more about that. But ma'am, reaching that 100-kilometer mark, it's definitely fraught with challenges. Could you tell us about the challenges associated with space tourism?
First of all, of course, it is very, very expensive. So even when we have different companies been coming up with this concept of space tourism, it's not for everyone. There's a very limited market size of people who can afford this kind of an experience. This is unique, and as of now, it's limited to a niche audience. Other than this, the safety concerns are very, very important. we have, like all space research which has been going on around the world for many, many years, that has mainly been about launching satellites. The technology which brings people back, that is kind of relatively newer. So that is one very big challenge, that re-entry process, that you have to bring something. Of course, if it's a human being going into space, that has to be safely brought back into the earth. And if there is any problem with the safety endeavors here, the result could really be catastrophic. Like we had the incidents of, Kalpana Chawla and her spacecraft coming back, and it led to death of all the astronauts. And here we are talking about taking civilians, people who might not really be that trained to handle an eventuality or any other critical situation if it happens. So safety concerns are very important. Other than that, this is something which we wish to do for leisure, for adventure. So we also have to think about the cost it brings in. Cost in the sense of the environmental aspect. We will need fuel. There's a lot of energy which goes into this whole exercise. Along with that, there will be a lot of spent fuel. So air pollution will be something which we'll be adding to our environment. Then there will be noise pollution which will be there. So we have to think about the environmental sustainability of this whole exercise. That is again a very important point here.
Now, taking into consideration the challenges which you just mentioned and the prospects of space tourism, what has India done so far?
So, see, India's space exploration or space policy has always been around bringing in some benefits, doing things which will help in the overall development of the country. So, space tourism is not something which is very high on our priority list, but because we have this pursuit of developing our technology, and especially in the area of space science, we want to be at par at the latest developments in the world. We do have a project. So India has a space tourism module which it is going to launch, and this is supposed to be ready and for launch by 2030. So this aircraft or spacecraft would be useful for sending 6 people at a time for this suborbital flight. But the challenge here is that we don't have reusable rockets. If you want to make space tourism a routine exercise, or if you want this to grow, you need rockets which you can, use again and again. So that reusable rocket technology is also which is something which we would need to develop if we want to grow this. So as of now, that is not in place, but just as an exercise, we hope to launch this space tourism module by 2030.
Okay, ma'am. Now, having discussed space tourism, let's move to space habitation, because that seems very remote, very surreal. Imagining yourself finding a place in space. So, what exactly is space habitation? Is it that?
So yes, space habitation is the idea which I think fascinates everybody at some point, that we would live somewhere beyond Earth. So when you're living anywhere other than Earth, that would count as space habitation. Now the possibility of doing this would be in 2 ways. One is actually finding that zone of the universe which is more suitable, or which is temperature wise ideal. We call that the Goldilocks zone. Around every star, like you have sun at the center of the solar system, there is one particular zone where it's neither very hot or neither it is very cold. So Earth comes in that zone. Mars also similarly would come in that Goldilocks zone. And of course you have the moon. So here the possibility is that these areas could be explored for future habitation. That's why a lot of research by all different countries are happening to explore this idea. Another point is to create a module, to create a capsule-like thing, like you have the International Space Station. That is a very regulated structure. It's not dependent on outside conditions of temperature or atmosphere or anything. Everything is inside that capsule. So if you talk about a habitation in a capsule like that, then that would be possible anywhere, at any point of the solar system.
Ma'am, you just mentioned ISS in your answer. Could you please tell us more about ISS and other global ventures?
So, this International Space Station, this is a very long-running space habitation. This has been around for more than 25 years, and this is a very, very successful experiment. This is the largest man-made object in space, which has been in orbit around the Earth. So, it goes around the Earth every 90 minutes. The success of this whole project has been because of the fact that it was an international collaboration. So you had NASA, you had the European Space Agency, you had Canada, you had Japan, you have Russia, you have all these players contributing in expertise and of course funds. Any space endeavor would always be very, very expensive. So you need a large pool of money which would be involved. So they pooled their collective abilities, and the design was really brilliant. The International Space Station has been built in segments. Like, it has taken around 10 years for the whole thing to be completed. It first started in 1998, and since then the design is such that they kept on adding structures to it. Like maybe a new segment, a new room, you can think of it like this is an apartment where 6 people would live. So they added rooms, they added a gym and things like that. So that flexibility is what really contributed to the success of the International Space Station. And now finally, after 25 years, they are trying to talk, there are talks about decommissioning it and maybe coming up with something new.
Now, this particular venture, space venture called Space Habitation, must also have its own set of challenges. What are those challenges and how are they different from, space tourism?
So this is where we are talking about human beings staying for a longer duration of time in space. So that means you need something which should be very similar to their life on Earth. So the challenges which come here is, first of all, of course, the air. You don't have an atmosphere, you need oxygen, right? You need a balance of that whole gases. So that has to be maintained or artificially sustained in some way. Then you need water. Now, there is a limitation of water and how much water we can carry. So there is a need to have very efficient recycling systems where everything from sweat and urine and all the other fluids have to be recycled to use again and again to sustain life, because without water it's not possible. Another issue would be again the temperature, like we spoke about, that the temperature conditions which human beings to live, they have to be regulated. It cannot be very extremely cold or very extremely warm, and you have to continuously maintain temperature conditions, which means that you also need a lot of energy to maintain that whole setup. Now, in space habitations, energy would mainly come from the solar energy, from the sunlight. And the problem of that is, again, it has its limitation. How do you capture it? What kind of design you use? And if it is more longer duration, how can you make it more efficient? That would be a problem. Then in space, one more thing which is different is the radiations which are there. So we have cosmic radiations which can be very, very harmful for human beings. So we need equipment and gear which is protective from this radiations. You cannot be exposed to those radiations. At the same time, those materials need to be very, very lightweight, because we are talking about having the possibility of traveling in space, or maybe even if it's a wearable product, then it has to be very, very lightweight. That becomes a very big limitation. And of course, gravity. One very big factor is the presence of microgravity. The gravity in space is much less as compared to the gravitational forces we experience on Earth. So that's why that idea of whole weightlessness and floating in space is there. Now, in terms of human health, like if you are going as a tourist, it will just be a few minutes, the impact will not be that severe. But if you choose to stay here, like even if you stay here for 2 months or 4 months, that would mean that your bones, your muscles are now experiencing a very different force. So people will lose bone mass. The muscles will work differently. The fluids in the body, which are trained to move according to gravity, they will move very differently. It can lead to some very severe accidents also, and some very severe long-term complications, maybe a lot of which we don't understand as of now.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering in detail. Now we'd like to know about its status in India. What India has done so far when it comes to space habitation.
So, as far as long-term habitation is concerned, of course, the world is very far away from that. But we are planning to set up a research enterprise in the form of the Bharatiya Antariksh Space Station. It is a very ambitious project of ISRO, where indigenously we want to design a space module. And the idea is that, of course, you think of a habitation, think of like a 5 BHK, 6 BHK kind of house. It cannot be designed in one go. So in this, what has to be done is you have to send that in space in parts. And then a lot of the assembly would take place in space only. So you have to go through multiple missions to send that. So the first mission would start in 2028. That's the current timeline. In fact, it has been integrated into the Gaganyaan mission also, which is the endeavor of India sending a first manned flight, first human flight to space. So it's a part of that program, and it is expected to be completed by 2035. That's the current timeline. The idea is, of course, to do more research on this area, like research on health, because you have a condition of microgravity, which will give you results which you cannot get on Earth. And at the same time, the very big part of India's space exploration or space development is to, compete with the global players to make sure that we show everybody that we have the most advanced facility, and we hope that some kind of commercial benefit would also come with this expertise which we are going to gain.
Sure, ma'am. You just mentioned the word commercial. Although it's not a new piece of technology, but we are talking about a different aspect of science and trying to commercialize it. So how is it going to open new avenues in science, technology, and engineering?
So, like you've mentioned, like we talk about STEM and development in that field. So, anything new which you do definitely means that you need more research in that area. Like here, we've talked about new set of challenges. So, that means we need new materials. New materials means that there is a need for more research. And the biggest point of, allowing people for space tourism or experiencing those few minutes of suborbital flights is the whole idea is that it really fascinates everyone. The idea of moon or observing things from space, that is a very, very big motivation. That is something which, kind of makes human have a superhuman kind of capability. So the idea is that that might really be encouraging for a lot of people, for a lot of young minds to be driven to this field, to work in this field. And like in India, we talk about bringing in a lot of startups in space technology. So with more avenues opening up in space, private players can also commercialize this whole idea. If they are investing in the whole engineering aspect of new technology, like I'll give you a very simple example. When you are living in space, if it's a long-term exercise, then you will need food to be grown there. Currently, what they do is anyone who goes to space, they have packaged meals which they take. But there's this product which was developed, which is a Chinese cabbage which can be grown in space. Now that cabbage uses very little water. Now that is being used in many parts where there is less water. So what we learn from space, the idea is to apply it here on Earth also and to drive innovation and experimentation further.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Since most of our viewers are UPSC civil services aspirants, we'd like to know from you the importance of this particular topic.
So, first of all, of course, anything which India does is always very important. UPSC has already asked a mains question on the Indian space station and the need for it. And other than that, whatever new mission comes, whatever new endeavor India takes up, that has been asked, like Chandrayaan was asked. So aspirants are expected to be, in tune with the developments, particularly of India's developments. Other than that, there are a lot of questions and topics in general on innovations and developments in science, which could have this example, fitting very well, even in an essay question. Like if you're talking about the power of mind or the limits of mind or exploration or scientific development, I think the idea of space tourism and or maybe habitation someday in space would fit as a very perfect example if you just chalk out the basic nuances of it.
I think we have quite comprehensively covered this particular concept, rather two different concepts, space tourism and space habitation. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable time and inputs. Any final words?
So I just wish the aspirants stay up to date on all the latest developments. A lot of things might open their mind also up to newer ideas, newer technologies, newer developments, which might help them stay in line for their UPSC preparation.
So, dear aspirants, we hope you liked and enjoyed this session. We'll keep coming up with more such interesting sessions. Till then, wish you all the very best. Thank you.